What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Marvel Snap video, and today we are taking a look at a deck that I used to win a tournament. I finally won my very first Marvel Snap tournament. I'm so happy. I'm so excited because I did it with this guy right here, Ronan. And although he is a big part of the deck, he's not the only win condition in this deck list. But if you know me, if you're an older viewer of the channel, you know that I love playing Ronan. This is one of my favorite cards in the game. Once they changed Sandman from a 4/1 to a 5/5, I started playing him a little bit less, so I haven't really been playing with Ronan that much. But now that Sandman is really prevalent in the meta, I think Ronan is actually really good in the meta right now. So I made this deck kind of built to counter Sandman, right? And what this deck does is essentially it wants to mess up our opponent's hand and deck as much as we can with Iceman, Korg, Scorpion, and then we can buff up our Ronan with the Maximus, and then we have a Dino, which can also get big with Sentinel, Coulson, and White Queen. So this deck just really clicked for me. It really worked for me. And Jeff, the new card that just came out a couple of days ago, he has proven to be very, very valuable for a couple of reasons. It's just one, he's just such a flexible card, right? Like 2/3 that you can essentially just play anywhere or move anywhere is just really, really good. He's just a really, like, a better Nightcrawler, essentially. And what I really like about Jeff is since Sandman is so prevalent, you can actually play one other card. Let's say maybe you play like an Agent Coulson plus a Jeff. Like, Jeff does not care about Sandman, so you can play one card down, and then if you have enough energy, you can play Jeff as a second card against Sandman, which is really, really cool. And another thing, I've been seeing a lot of Professor X lately, and Jeff just does not care about Professor X. You can throw him into a Professor X lane, you can move him into a Professor X lane, move him out of a Professor X lane. So Jeff has been absolutely clutch for me in this deck list. So about the tournament real quick, it was run by Marvel Snap Battle Arenas, I believe is what it's called. Yeah, Marvel Snap Battle Arena. There is a Discord server. If you want to join it, I'll leave a link to that Discord server in the description if you want to join. They run daily tournaments there, basically, yeah, pretty much every day. This one specifically was a 16-player single elimination tournament, meaning if you lost one round that you were eliminated. So I had to go 4-0 to win the whole thing. It was a closed deck list, no restrictions, so you could play whatever deck you wanted with any cards, right? That's why I'm able to play Jeff, because there's no restrictions within the tournament. So I built this deck to counter the Sandman meta. However, the final matchup was against a Thanos player. I did beat someone playing a Sandman deck in one of the earlier rounds, but I just recorded the final rounds. If I recorded all 4 rounds, this video would be like an hour long, so I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to show the final round, right, because I think it was really exciting. So I'll show some gameplay here from the final round of the tournament. But I did beat a Thanos deck, I beat a Sandman deck, and then I'm not sure what the other 2 opponents were playing. I don't remember, but honestly, I kind of want to say there was at least one other Sandman deck. So basically, this deck worked out, and yeah, it really, really surprised me because, you know, I've been entering these tournaments a lot, and I always just come up like, you know, second, third, fourth. Sometimes I just get eliminated on the first round, and I was really happy to finally win one. So enough rambling from me. Let's go ahead and get into the gameplay here. So what I'm going to do here is we are going to watch some gameplay from the final round of the tournament. I did not record my reactions during the gameplay of the tournament because I was just really focused. So this is kind of just like secondhand commentary here. And I don't know what my opponent is playing until I see the Mind Stone. I guess technically I could have checked the amount of cards in their deck, right? That's what I usually do to check if they're a Thanos deck. But either way, I see the Mind Stone and the Time Stone come down. Tinker's Workshop was the first location, so we're fine with just throwing Scorpion down here. And I got to get something out of my hand so I can keep on getting draws. So obviously Okoye is the play here. Our opponent plays a bishop. And right now, I'm thinking the play is actually Maximus, since our opponent's hand is almost full. That Maximus is a downside to drawing my opponent 2 cards. Doesn't really matter too much, right? So he draws 1 with the Space Stone, and then he'll draw 1 from Maximus. So here he drops a Daredevil. My opponent snaps, but I stay in the round here because I got a pretty good hand, right? Like I got a lot of stuff I can do here. I got Polaris, Coulson, Ronan, Korg, and yeah, I like playing the Polaris. I was debating whether or not to play Polaris in the middle or the left, but I like Polaris in the middle to try and clog up that location a little bit. That's kind of one of the main reasons I have Polaris in this deck list, is to really just disrupt our opponent's board. And the thing is, too, that since there is a lot of Sandman ramp going around, there's a lot of people playing Ebony Maw, and what you can do is pull that Ebony Maw to somewhere where they're trying to play cards, and that can really mess them up. So my opponent does play a Carnage, and I think pulling the Mind Stone to the middle does actually end up working in our favor. And here, I think the best thing to do, I was considering playing Wave here, but at this point, I don't have much information about my opponent's deck. So they could potentially, could have been playing Death. So I didn't want to play Wave just to help them out. So what I did was I played Sentinel and Coulson in the middle, knowing with New York, I could move one of those cards to New York if I wanted to. So I dropped the Sentinel, and then we drop the Coulson as well. And my opponent plays a Spider-Man, which actually makes things pretty tricky for us. He then drops a Ghost on top of New York, and the Ghost was part of the Triskelion. It wasn't part of his actual deck list. And here is where I kind of got to make a decision, right? So if I stay in the game, it's worth 4 cubes. If I retreat now, I just lose 2 cubes. And I'm trying to think of like every possible scenario of what I can do to stay into the game. And what I started to consider is sometimes I just like to take that risk. And the risk here is Shanna. Shanna will spawn a 1 power or 1 cost unit on every location on your side of the board, right? Including where you play her. So she will actually spawn something into Death's domain. So what I was thinking there was I might actually have a good shot of pulling out something to win Death's domain. She pulls a Nightcrawler, which actually ties Death's domain, and then a 0 in the middle. He plays Professor X and Bast, and I end up winning the tiebreaker. I was so hyped after this moment, because really just taking a risk paid off, man. It just really paid off. I was so happy. So next round up, I have a pretty good hand to start off with, right? I got a nice curve. Iceman into Jeff, into the Polaris. Of course, we're going to drop down Iceman first. Our opponent drops a Mind Stone on turn 1, which is really good for Thanos decks. So obviously, we'll just go ahead and drop the Jeff here into the middle location. And my opponent puts something into Dark Dimension. I don't know what it is exactly. And then we get Sakaar. So I was thinking of playing the Polaris, but my logic with playing the Scorpion was that I'd probably play the Scorpion while he has a bigger hand before Sakaar pulls something down and makes his hand smaller. So Sakaar pulls a Thanos and for my opponent, and then a White Queen for myself. And now here, my hand is not looking too great. Like, I can drop the Polaris and the Korg, which is good. But then I have a 2-power Spider-Man that I got from my opponent, and then a Devil Dino, which is very small because I only have 3 cards in my hand. And then I draw Agent Coulson. So here is when I'm starting to consider, okay, maybe I should retreat, right? Because I am ahead. My opponent lost 4 cubes already. And my opponent snaps, and right there for me, it just made my decision easier. I was like, okay, he's snapping. Yeah, I'm out of here. So that actually kind of helped me out a little bit. I really think that was a good retreat on my part, kind of recognizing that Sakaar kind of screwed me over a little bit there, and I didn't know what he had in the dark dimension, right? So, yeah, it kind of screwed me over a little bit. Next round here, we get Korg on 1, which is really, really good. Icebox unfortunately hits our Sentinel. That really messes up our curve. I have nothing to play on turn 2, which really sucks because this is a deck that really wants, you know, to play on curve, get some early game tempo. My opponent snaps, and I'm thinking, okay, my hand is not too great right now, and Death's Domain is not really great for me either since he can lock it down Professor X. So I get out of there, lose 1 cube, right? No big deal. I'm still ahead. My opponent's down 4 cubes. I'm only down 2. And now we get a really good hand and a good starting location with Stark Tower. Iceman hitting our Maximus kind of sucks, but it's not terrible, right? Because we still have the Scorpion and the Coulson. And then I get the Ronan and we get nowhere. And I decide to snap because Thanos decks tend to have a big hand size. So Ronan can get pretty big. And I could put my Ronan behind nowhere to protect him from a potential Shang-Chi. I don't know if he runs Shang-Chi in his deck list at this point, since there are still a couple cards at this point in his deck that I haven't seen yet. And that Scorpion really hurts the stones, right? Because he essentially played a 0-point time stone and a 0-point reality stone. It changes into the super flow, which is fine, like, since, you know, it doesn't really matter too much. I go ahead and I drop the Maximus on the nowhere, which is really good. Just denies him any sort of draws. And here, I gotta admit, this was a very lucky top deck. I'm not gonna lie. He plays Professor X on the left location, and he's probably thinking he wins that location, right? I mean, usually he would, but I top decked the Jeff, so I play Jeff onto the Stark Tower to actually tie Stark Tower, and then we play a Sentinel on the right location, just for some extra points here, and it's looking really good for me. This is where Jeff really comes in handy. Like, my deck was a good matchup, to be honest. Like, Jeff doesn't care about Professor X. Ronan is really good against Thanos because Thanos decks just tend to have big hands. And the locations were pretty lucky too, I'm not going to lie. Like, Maximus onto nowhere is really good for me. So our opponent drops a Devil Dinosaur. So from here, I'm deciding, do I want to play either Ronan or Devil Dino as my finisher here? And I'm thinking I'm playing to nowhere again, just in case he has a Shang-Chi, right? Because potentially I could play one of my big cards into Super Flow and it just dies to Shang-Chi. But I think it's safer to play into nowhere. And I'm deciding between playing Dino or Ronan. I'm seeing which one's bigger. They're both going to be the same amount of power. But I think I end up going with Ronan. And the reason for that is because because the stones draw cards, right? So I was thinking maybe he'd play like a stone or something to draw some extra cards. But he plays a Valkyrie onto the right. And I win the tiebreaker. So that is another 4 cubes in the bag. The Jeff absolutely clutched it here. And now we know that he has a Valkyrie and Dino in his deck. Now, the thing is, now that I've seen Valkyrie, I'm not really expecting a Shang-Chi. Like, I feel like you see one or the other in a deck list and not both. So at this point, I'm thinking I'm safe from Shang-Chi. We got Korg on turn 1, which is really good. And also, I want to mention, I got America Chavez in this deck list because I want to play Iceman, Korg, Scorpion like as early as possible, right? And it may seem like I'm getting good draws, and I mean, I kind of am, but America Chavez helps with that. I really think she does, because almost every game I have something to play on turn 1, either Iceman or Korg, right? And yeah, it's just it's really nice to have Chavez in this deck list. So he plays a Carnage. He's got a 4-point Carnage. We just play a Polaris into the right location just for, you know, some points. And then here we see a Beast and a Spider-Man come down. So I know he has Professor X in his deck already, so I know he's going to play Professor X onto the Spider-Man location. So Basically, at this point, I'm telling myself, okay, I just need to abandon Warrior Falls. Like, just forget about Warrior Falls, focus on the other two locations. So here, it's basically play Dino or Ronan. And I was kind of debating. I could also do one of my 3 cost plus Scorpion, but I think it's better to just play Dino at this point. And like I predicted, he plays Professor X into the left location. So at this point, our best finisher is just to throw a Ronan in the middle. Potentially could have done Maximus and Coulson in the middle, but if he plays a Dino, I think we just lose to that. So what we do is we play the Ronan into the middle location here. And yeah, at this point, like I said, since I already saw Valkyrie, I'm not expecting a Shang-Chi. So I think my Devil Dino is safe. Since he is an ongoing, Valkyrie just doesn't really do anything against my Devil Dino. So here we see what he plays. I got a Ronan, 11-point Ronan. He plays Chavez and a Soul Stone, but the Soul Stone draws him a card actually, and my Ronan gets +2. It ties the middle, and I win the tiebreaker. Just an absolutely amazing game here. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I really dig this deck list. I've been playing it on ladder as well. It's pretty decent on ladder, and maybe this deck could even be optimized further. I'm not entirely sure, but what I will say is that Jeff is just an absolutely amazing card. I really love him so much. It's kind of hard to say like whether or not he's worth 6,000 tokens, right? It kind of depends on what cards you have in your collection. But personally, I spent 6,000 tokens on him, and I do not regret it. I think he's a lot of fun. I think he's a really good card. And a couple other things I want to say real quick is I think Agent Coulson is actually like one of the MVPs for battle mode. And the reason for that is because he adds a random 4 cost and a random 5 cost card to your hand. And you know, usually randomness in Marvel Snap, it can be like a negative thing, right? But the randomness in battle mode is actually a positive because you can surprise your opponent with cards. Like, you see someone playing Agent Coulson and they don't know what you got from him, right? So you can completely catch them off guard with a random 4 cost or 5 cost card in your hand. And when you look at the list of 4 and 5 cost cards in your hand, or I mean that you can add, right, that are just available in the game, like there's not a lot of bad cards here. Like something will provide value. And if anything, if maybe you get 2 really crappy cards, they're just 2 extra cards to help fill up your hand for your Devil Dino, and he's a 3/4. Like, that's not a bad stat line, right? There was one game I didn't record where he actually gave me a Black Bolt, and I played a Black Bolt that won me the game. I wish I was recording that one, but yeah, Agent Coulson, really good for battle mode, really good with Devil Dino decks. Ronan in a good spot right now in the meta with all the Sandman going around. America Chavez, just really good consistency. Iceman, Korg, Scorpion, good disruptive tools. Sentinel, just a good proactive card just to put points on the board, keep your hand full. Polaris, really good for that disruptive factor, and 5 power is not bad. And I mentioned this earlier, but a lot of Ebony Maw going around because of Sandman players. You can move that Ebony Maw and really just kind of mess up their plays. Maximus, I mean, 3 for 7. 7 is just a lot of power on the board. You can play him. You can play him naturally to let your opponent draw 2 cards, right? To buff up your Ronan. And what I like about Maximus is to combo with the Korg, right? Because sometimes you shuffle a rock into their deck. Maximus draws them 2 cards. Well, one of those cards just might be a rock, right? And that's not bad. And usually they just hold that rock in their hand, which will make your Ronan better, right? So that it all kind of synergizes a little bit. Or you can just do Maximus on the final turn of the game, and the drawing 2 cards doesn't really matter for them. You can do Maximus plus like Coulson at the end of the game. White Queen is just good to buff up your Dino and give you some additional information. And that is the deck list. Try this deck out for yourself. The only card in here that is above Series 3 is actually Jeff. And he's a really hard card to replace, if I'm being honest with you. Like, he's just such a good card. But if you don't have Jeff, I suppose what I was playing earlier was actually Black Widow. I think Black Widow is good for more disruptive value, right? Kind of just reducing the chances of your opponent drawing those key cards. Or you could just also play Lizard, right? Lizard is just a good 2-cost card. So yeah, if you don't have Jeff, I would probably play one of those cards, or you can also consider playing Angela as well. I think Angela is just a good card, right? Like, just to put some points on the board. Or you could go Daredevil for more information. There's a ton of things you can do. You don't need Jeff. He is a good card, but he is not required for this deck list. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate y'all so much. If you liked the video, please consider liking and subscribing. I would really appreciate if we can get to 1,500 subscribers. It would make me very happy. And if you stuck around to the end of the video, that means you're a real one. And the keyword for this video is consistency. Type in consistency in the comments, and I know you stuck around to the end. You're a real one for that, and I appreciate you so very much. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Later.